more, let's bring in former Deputy Treasury Secretary Michael Faulkender. Michael, great to see you. Not even getting into the kind of prosperity created from the one big beautiful law, the tax refunds, and the higher wages that people will experience. Let's just focus on the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, first time in 3.5 years, falling below 6%. That is an avenue not just to buying a home, getting into a home where people couldn't, but also potentially refinancing opportunities and unlocking wealth there. This is all part of the president's plan.
That's right, because if you look at what happened to the median mortgage payment between when Joe Biden came into office and when President Trump returned to the White House, it doubled, Dagan. If you look at what interest rates did and what housing costs were at, if you then calculate the principal and interest payment on just the median priced home in the United States, the monthly payment doubled. And so what the president has been focused on ever since he came into office was how do we put in place more sound economic policies so that we can bring down interest rates while simultaneously figuring out how we can create incentives for there to be more housing built. Because if we can build more houses and have housing prices be more affordable and then have mortgage interest rates also come down, that's the magic combination that can then once again return access to home ownership to the American people.
You touched on something, Michael, that I think is an interesting part of this, and that is, you know, you said you got to have prices become more affordable for housing. The president in the State of the Union said, I don't want to see housing prices come down because people have built a lot of wealth through their home ownership. For the whole thing to get fixed, do we need to see housing prices come down meaningfully, or can you somehow thread that needle without that happening?
The biggest component is that we need mortgage interest rates to come down, and as you just said, there's been a lot of progress on that. If we can get some of the unnecessary costs out of home ownership, so if you look at the permitting costs for new home construction, we ought to see what we can do to put pressure on states and municipalities to bring down the cost of new construction. The president's right that what we don't want to do is depress the cost of existing homes, but for the purpose of construction of new homes, we should be doing what we can to work with states and municipalities to bring down permitting costs, zoning restrictions, and construction costs so that new construction can be affordable for new families.
And before we move on, Michael, I just want to highlight that the 10-year yield on the 10-year Treasury, which is what indicates the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, that's what the 30-year fix is priced off of, it's down, and it's right at like 4.01 today, but it has come down slightly. It's held, but come down since the Supreme Court decision on tariffs last week. You would think the opposite would happen with that revenue disappearing. Didn't happen. It is so stable under President Trump. It is shocking, or maybe it's not shocking to people who understand his policies. But in terms of other policies on housing, it appears that President Trump has help from Congress in his battle to keep large investors, like big Wall Street investors, from buying up single-family homes. Brian?
Yeah, so Republican Senator Josh Hawley and Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley introduced a bill that would do that, and they're not alone in taking up that fight. Listen to this.
It's just not fair to a first-time home buyer who comes in, they pick a house, they've got their financing in place, and then it gets scooped up by some billionaire investor who can pay all cash.
The premise is very simple. We want to make certain that single-family homes are available to American citizens to be able to build their version of the American dream, and not have single-family homes be sucked up by Wall Street firms that jack up prices and keep people as perpetual renters.
Okay, so Michael, you got an interesting cast of characters there. You've got some conservatives on one hand, you got Elizabeth Warren on the other. They're all singing from the same hymnal here. As an economist, do you like the idea of limiting who can buy homes in the market, or is that does that make you a little nervous from kind of that old free market perspective?
It makes me pretty nervous. So I am one of those who thinks that the problem that we have is an insufficient supply of single-family homes, not that what we need to do is curtail demand for them. Now, I will readily admit my bias. I am a renter of a single family home, and I am appreciative of the fact that for those of us that think the right thing to do is rent, that there is opportunities for us to find houses to rent. There are different circumstances for different people, and what we should be doing is making sure we increase options for people, not suggest that we need to reduce the opportunity for any owner to come in and provide rental housing. If we could just work across the country to increase construction, because remember, new construction and permitting, they're at levels we have not seen since the financial crisis. What we need to do is focus on construction and bringing additional supply online.
And Michael, I just add to what you're talking about. So this Merkley-Hawley, senators, both different sides of the aisle, the legislation they've introduced amends the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 and makes it illegal for investment funds with over 150 million in assets to buy single-family homes. So what that does is, in a downturn in housing, that buyer will not be there. So
that's absolutely right. Yeah, you need to think about that this is not just for a time period when there's housing constraints. They would be putting in place a law that would continue for years, if not decades. There are situations where we want companies coming in and, for instance, providing corporate rental units to their employees, or, as you just said, when you have a downturn, that there be a buyer that's willing to come in so that sellers can have a market. We really should think more broadly about before we put in place restrictions on who can buy homes.
Okay, it's a big debate. We'll watch it. We appreciate you weighing in on it, Michael Faulkender. Good to see you, sir.
great to see you, Michael.
Great
Thank
to be
you.
with you.